WordPress plugins.
You forgot the please.
Oh, I would read your.
You forgot please on the side.
I'm sorry. Starting now, please make WordPress extensions, IndieWeb WordPress extensions. I'm lonely, facilitated by our own David Chance.
Plugins, extensions, and so on.
Dang it! Extensions are different from plugins.
No.
At
In
home.
WordPress, nobody uses the term extension.
Right there.
So how is it happening?
So is anybody volunteering to be the note taker?
I can do it. Yeah.
Since I am the facilitator.
Yeah, I can totally do that. Let me pull it up.
Please document all of the people in attendance.
Will do.
So you take the roll if everybody would call out when their name is called. Sorry.
Here.
So WordPress has a lot of advantages and disadvantages.
These.
The advantage being there are a lot of people on WordPress. The disadvantage being there are a lot of people on WordPress. And WordPress has over a decade now of history, which is, again, an advantage. You have a stable system that people use and other people are developing enhancements for all the time. But you also have a lot of things that drive people crazy that you can't get rid of because they're committed to backward compatibility.
This is true.
Including pingbacks and trackbacks, which haven't been touched in years in any significant manner. And the ping and trackback component maintainer for WordPress cannot get any interest in doing anything with it. By the way, I'm the ping and trackback component maintainer for WordPress.
Really?
I don't care about pings. No one else wanted the job. It was really easy to get. I said, what would I have to do? They said, you just did it. And I didn't volunteer. I just asked them, what exactly does a component maintainer do? And they said, now you're one. Okay, figure it out.
Yeah.
Still haven't quite figured that out. But there are a variety of WordPress plugins that are intentionally IndieWeb and others that are just IndieWeb by proxy. Namely, they do things that are IndieWeb-like, but they're not necessarily community plugins. For example, how many plugins can you think of off the top of your head that allow you to post to Twitter? If you did a search in the WordPress plugin repository.
Yeah.
So it is an IndieWeb plugin in that it allows you to take stuff from your site and syndicate it. However, it is not specifically designed with the community in mind. So IndieWeb plugins are usually community plugins.
Yeah.
Ones that were designed by somebody who wasn't necessarily in the community, but was aware of the community and was trying to build with that in mind.
Where?
My Twitter scraper is like that.
Yeah, so you built it. It does something that is an IndieWeb thing, but it is not a community plugin. You weren't doing it as...
I wasn't like, this will be perfect for IndieWeb.
Well, that's, it's more you weren't involved in some... Most of the IndieWeb plugins are based on enhancing things that the community has been talking about. Look at the list inside the IndieWeb plugin, which has a list of possible... Actually does call them extensions. But no, deliberately, because they're plugins, but... So it has the web mention plugin. So web mentions being a protocol, it's very easy. You install it and you have web mentions. It's semantic link backs. Nobody can figure out what by name. In defense of that, Matthias is German, and if you look at the structure of German language, it is very much like that, where the terminology. Then you have micropub by itself. Again, back like web mention, it's a protocol plugin. Purely simply, that's what it does. And then, of course, you have postkinds, which is not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah.
Syndication links, again, back to function. You want to put a link on your website to where you are syndicating, there's a plugin for it. So that plugin also, that one was created with the IndieWeb in mind, but there are plenty of people who like it who aren't in the IndieWeb community. Why? Because they want a little link to each individual post on their post where it was somewhere. Then, of course, the Bridgie plugin, which is basically there just so that people can have a user interface for Bridgie, since Bridgie is something completely different. I don't know. I maintain that one, and it really annoys me when somebody complains that Bridgie doesn't work properly because I really can't do anything about that. There's actually a note in the literature that says This is a user interface plugin. Bridgie is a service. If there's a problem with Bridgie, please go talk.
Bridgie.
Links directly to their GitHub repository. Then there's the IndieAuth plugin, which hasn't been officially updated in 4 years. I know I'm working on it. Matthias has abandoned it about 4 years ago, and I expressed interest in taking it over. So it got transferred to the IndieWeb community repository, so it's now a community plugin. The Microformats 2 plugin, which is basically if your theme doesn't support microformats, it tries to do it with
To jam them in there.
well, it basically tries to do it with hooks and filters, which works horribly.
Yeah.
But it actually does say in the plugin, we recommend you use an actual theme.
Yeah.
And of course, simple location. The fact that there isn't location support built into WordPress is one that sort of surprises me. So
Why?
that there's no location support.
Yeah.
Because that one, when it was a blogging platform as opposed to a CMS, which it sort of migrated into, it surprised me that there was very little interest in it. The original plugin for geolocation was abandoned years ago. Nobody's touched it. Not even to the point, again, it doesn't really need that much more, but not even to the point of making sure that it was compatible with newer versions. Just sort of died. So now there's a plugin that does that, and now it does weather. And there
Shouldn't
are
you have simple weather to complement simple location?
well, you can't do weather without location. So
That's true.
Oh, okay.
That
Good
makes
point.
a good point.
the thing is, how do you know where your weather is? Now, admittedly, it's not designed to be a.
I'm feeling lucky.
Okay.
Weather
It is
somewhere
not
in
designed to be a weather plugin.
Yeah.
So it's not, I want to show the weather. It does have a widget if you want to show the weather on the front of your website. It's designed to be weather for posts.
Yeah.
The fact that I did put in a weather widget because the code was there and why not?
Yeah,
It could run very nicely in cooperation with something that actually does show the current conditions at just one location.
Yeah.
But it's there to add context to posts. Although it has a few other interesting features. It actually does time zone support, which is because it's also a location-based concept. Where WordPress doesn't actually allow you to have each post to have its own time zone. The way that it's designed is that the system has a time zone. So basically, your WordPress installation has a time zone. Everything is adjusted for that. So the problem
There's
is
also DMT.
no, it does keep global time. But the problem is if you change the time setting,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't update the old timestamps. So if your it doesn't
It's
use
relative to where
which is a problem.
you
So
have that setting. Yeah.
So what I did was a plugin that would basically, if enabled, override the time zone and display it in whatever time zone location the post was.
Right.
So this happened when I was somewhere and was annoyed that it's 4 a.m. No, I wasn't up at 4 a.m. I was in a country where it was 10 a.m.
Right.
So it will now display that with the, again, that if your theme shows what time zone it is, it'll show the actual time zone code, but otherwise it'll show it was 10 p.m. that day.
Yeah. But at least it's flexible enough that you can go into WordPress and you can make that happen with a plugin.
Yeah.
Override all that stuff.
But the question is, what does the community need? And who can write it? Who's willing to work to write new things for? Because with simple location, I'm using it as an example because it's the last bigger project that I did. It wasn't just a minor tweak. I spent days working on weather.
Yeah.
I added in 2 features, which I do not have on my website because I wasn't 100% happy with them. But within an hour of me posting the update, Chris Aldrich had those 2 features installed on his website. And he's showing them. In fact, if you go to the front of his website, which is bafosako.com,
That's.
I'd imagine Chris is listening because he was on earlier. But if you actually go to the front of his website, he has a location down here right above his categories. Last seen, Rosemead, California, United States of America. That's actually now built into the simple location plugin. It is the last recorded location that you posted from.
That's cool.
And below it is the weather widget, the very simple one that I created. Just so that
Is that the weather from the last seen location?
it's configurable, actually.
Oh, see.
I don't know what he set it for. You
Got
can
it.
set it for a defined location, or you can set it for last seen.
If it's defined, it just periodically updates. Or
About every, it's a transient. It's about every 5 minutes.
okay.
So basically, it's just cached, and when the cache
I
runs
know.
out, it'll pull it
Fetch it
again.
again.
I don't think the weather's going to change. Again, he could have changed the setting. The default.
This is actually just a text widget. It's California. Because the weather's almost always the same.
58 is cold for California.
Yeah, I think it is.
But the basic point
Los
is
Angeles, sunny and 80.
that's built. That's built in, and that he has it up.
Yeah.
Whereas I put the weather widget feature in mostly because how else would I test the API before I started putting it into posts? I needed something to look at.
Yeah.
So the question is, what's missing? For different people, it's different things, but what is it that the community as a whole wants? This week, it appears to be a token endpoint because everybody's pushing me to write one, so I said I'd write one. Also, I figured Aaron's here, and
Yeah, you can help me out.
he wrote a micropub endpoint in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Not a very good one, but point is, I could not write a micropub endpoint in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So, what is the community missing? What do people want? And who's willing to write it? Are you willing to write something?
I don't know if I can commit to that. I would help out.
Yeah. Well, the more people get involved, the better it is. And I'm always happy, even if people wanted to contribute a new feature to any of those things. One of the people in the community would do it. If it's, let's see, right now, if it's micropub, Brian's pretty responsive, even though he doesn't write his own features very much. He manages it. Although I will give you advice if you want to contribute anything to micropub, unit tests are required. He's very specific about that. Semantic linkbacks and web mentions are handled by Matthias, and he doesn't ask for unit tests quite as much, but he wants it to work, so it better work. I don't like unit tests, so I probably wouldn't ask for them. But I have my 4 things, and I'd love it if somebody. And as for IndieAuth and the IndieWeb plugin itself, and we didn't discuss the IndieWeb plugin, which does have features, despite the fact that it is mostly this installer is what people see. It does have features related to identity. It does, if you look at the front of my website, it does the RelMe widget on the side. And if you don't have the RelMe widget, it'll actually embed the RelMe links into your header. So there's a hidden version, and there's a shown version.
Yeah.
And it has this little HCard widget. A very simple one that can be styled if you don't want to write your own HCard. And there's a lot in all those areas. There's a lot that can be done. And every time I have an idea, if you want to know where you can see all the things I thought of, I actually just file them as an issue.
Yeah.
Because at some point, I will actually
That's
go back. So if you went to name a plugin or a topic, I'll pull it up.
A topic?
Out of all those plugins I mentioned, name one of them or an area that.
In the weather one.
Okay, so that's a simple location plugin. So let's see. As I said, all of my ideas are filed as issues because I will not remember them after I do them.
That's what
you're supposed to do. So here we are. Add support for alternative geolocation, namely.
geolocation.
Yeah. Thermometer icon shows with no data set. That's Christologist complaining that if he puts anything in, then the thermometer will show. Let's see. Display altitude when set and above a certain number. Let's see. Auto add weather on publish.
Okay.
So if you publish via micropub, automatically add in the weather, which it doesn't do right now.
Is that an option?
Well, there'd obviously be a way to turn it off, but it would either be do it or don't do it. But, private geofencing.
That sounds hard.
Well, every time I talk to Aaron, he makes everything sound so easy.
I don't know, just the thought of private geofencing.
It was basically when I was trying to outline my idea, he pointed me to how Flickr does it, which is basically it will hide your specific location if you're within basically a radius around.
Oh, like your house kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to figure out how to do private locations where I wanted people to know I'm somewhere, but I don't want them to know where that somewhere is.
You can definitely granularity of it. Yeah.
Yeah, but his suggestion was, okay, fine, put in where that place is and have it, if it within a certain distance from that place.
Yeah.
Don't show.
Yeah.
So these are all things that are on the list. Preview, map, and admin. So right now you see the map when you publish. You can't actually see it before you publish.
That's kind of easy.
Yeah, but they're all things I haven't done.
I know.
Import latitude and longitude from photo. By the way, the plugin already saves the latitude and longitude from a photo in the photo. So WordPress
does it.
WordPress doesn't do it.
Didn't say the GPS data. They save the EXIF data.
They parse the EXIF data, but they don't save the GPS data. Simple Location saves the GPS data when you add a photo.
Right.
It saves it to the attachment post type, but it doesn't say if you attach that to a post, it doesn't give you the option of taking the location from the photo and applying it to the post.
Okay.
Which is doable, but I've never written it.
I mean, the way I'd handle it, do you want ideas on how to do this? I don't know. Give me ideas on how to do this.
But I do. The reason I
I
have
mean, what I would do is whenever you display that widget that says you're going to add the geolocation data, that meta box that lets you add the geolocation, you can look at the post content and go through them and find the IDs of the attachments inserted to them.
But that's back to number 56, add support for alternative methods of geolocation. In order for me to do it, I have to make it so that it isn't hard-coded to go to HTML5.
No. What I'm saying is, like, you would just display, like, you have a button that says get my location, right? And it does stuff.
Yes.
But you could also just have a list of locations. I guess it'd be hard to do that.
Well, the list of locations.
You just have
venues.
random latitude, longitude coordinates.
Yeah, what you're thinking of is venues, which is actually one of the ones on the list.
Yeah.
Venues, as the plugin defines venues, but has not actually implemented them.
Yeah.
As venues are basically a bookmark location.
Yeah.
As opposed to a location attached to a post. They're a location that exists by itself that can be related to a post as opposed to.
Yeah.
So the feature is implemented on a very low level, but it is not actually, there's no interface for it. So therefore it is not in use. It's promised. So I promised people someday I would do it, but have not actually done it. So that's just one plugin full of ideas. And I'd love it if people started sending ideas in there because a lot of them might, even though I didn't think of it, I like doing them.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking for using your GPS data from photos, like here, bring up the admin interface of it.
But
For simple location, like on your site.
Okay, this is
the
the
test or whatever.
Yeah, this is the test. Sorry.
It's like you're gonna add a new post.
Yeah. And I never liked the UI for it, but it's still better than the old one. So I have to redesign it because I just shoehorned the weather in there and it doesn't really look very good. But I figured let me get it working.
Yeah.
So there's the little icon.
Yeah, and you click that.
And it brings up the browser.
Yeah. Like gives you that long, and you look up, you do a reverse geocode that long, right?
Yeah, but if you actually look, it's hidden because the information is not being used right now.
Yeah.
This is what's actually being pulled up. So it still thinks that we're in 1911 Wills Road.
Right.
But if I went to the next step, it would not be looking based on the browser's reporting. It would be able to report where I actually was.
I mean, you could do an IP.
Well, that
Not
isn't
as accurate, though.
well, no, that isn't. If the browser's doing an IP, you have to have a GPS chip.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So ultimately, it is. But I'd like to be able to. I'd like to have that button browser for that data, which is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's the time zone thing,
Right.
where you can actually change. And there are a few other tricks that nobody ever notices because nobody ever reads the manual.
Yeah. Right.
If you can actually click this to have it set to the time zone of the browser. In the event you're not doing location, that'll actually do it, although nobody ever notices because it only works if you're on the same time zone you're normally in.
Yeah.
So to do that, I have to just force my change the time of the computer.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you make a checkbox
where?
or an option that just says automatically give me the time zone based on the.
Well, I could have that as an automatic option. Right now, it's as I said. Right now, there's no UI, so it's basically you click the clock, it'll actually do it.
Yeah.
It's all done on the front end.
Right, because it's JavaScript based.
It has to be in. For what it is. But here's the question comes: is there anybody interested in building something else for WordPress for public sharing?
I mean, I probably would if I got around to adding indie features to my now static website. I mean, one of my plans is to turn my static website into a dynamic WordPress website. That's what I do.
Yeah. Well, the thing I really need help with is probably the UI because it never looks very nice.
Yeah.
Admittedly, I'm saying it's very simple, but also I'm worried that this entire interface will have to be replaced with that whole Gutenberg transition to me. Which is why I'm sort of being very reluctant to completely redesign the UI in the event that WordPress completely forces me to.
Yeah.
And I have to learn JavaScript. I do use JavaScript on here, but very little.
Use React, which isn't JavaScript, it's just different.
I don't know. My next plan is to get rid of the palm tree. The palm tree is the weather lookup icon.
I would do a cloud.
Yeah.
Well, it just seems to be a generic weather
Well,
icon.
yeah, but these are the built-in dash icons. I didn't want to bother. As I said, I was doing it quickly, so I didn't want to load on the first try, load my phone icon, and it was the only one that looked sort of weathery out of their collection.
Yeah.
Because it was already I have enough icon sets that I've loaded in. Syndication links and the IndieWeb plugin load in, I think it's like 600 possible icons for possible websites somebody might link to.
Oh.
I automated that last month because I was tired of every time there was an icon somebody wanted, actually going and having to find a copy of it and putting it in.
Oh,
So I have a script I have a repository that I'm pulling off of. I have a script that basically goes in and automatically generates the CSS files and everything. So whenever they do icons, I just have to run a program to.
Yeah.
So anybody who I just basically put in there, anybody who wants an icon, get them to put it in their repository.
Yeah.
So far, they now have a known icon,
Oh.
and Untapped was the other one somebody asked for. Yeah, so now everybody can go and share that their post is also on Untapped. I'm boring in that regard. But that's the question I wanted to sort of ask, which is there anybody interested in contributing? Because there's always, even contributing, there are other things that are needed. I mentioned the UI part, even user feedback, documentation.
Yep.
Nobody ever sits around and writes documentation.
I like doing documentation.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, and the problem is, if you actually look at, and this was even apparent if you watch the recording from Austin, me trying to explain from start to finish all of the different ways that you can use one of these plugins, and I'm not just talking about the ones that I Web Mentions, when it started, had no settings.
Yeah.
It still has a minimal amount of settings.
Right.
It doesn't really need that many settings, but same thing with semantic linkbacks. It had none. It now has the FacePile settings.
What's FacePile?
FacePile is the little pictures of people that go in a little row.
Got it.
So that you don't.
Neat. Didn't know how to name.
Yeah. So if you actually look in the discussion settings down at the bottom, right here, Web Mentions. Yeah, you can see it right here. Automatically embed FacePiles. May not work on all themes for mentions, reposts, likes, reactions, emoji, favorites, tags, bookmarks, and RSVPs. How many is your initial number of faces to show in a FacePile? Do you want 0?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's Ryan. I rarely have more than 5 people in it responding to anything. Then disable self-pings on the same URL, enable web mention support for pages, and set a page for mentions of your homepage to be redirected to. So these are all features that came in later, because originally it had nothing.
Yeah, I think so. Just with regard to that question, I switched, saying earlier, I use WordPress here for my job, and I switched to it because the plugin package that you all put together is fantastic for getting people started.
Yeah, and the problem has always been that we don't explain it well enough to people, which is
and that's where one of the, like, for the session I proposed, and like also one of the goals Marty and I have as far as our sessions of Homebrew Website Club is like coming up with 1 hour activities or documentation or whatever specifically for like that purpose of like, okay, so you have WordPress. Here is a 1 hour activity that we're going to help you with, facilitate, document to get you up and running with these plugins or whatever. Like, even here's how you install these plugins, like that kind of thing. So like, that's a goal that we have as far as like helping create some of that.
The closest we have is the getting started page, which has been not the one on the wiki, the one that's built into the IndieWeb plugin, which is basically it's undergone a few changes, but right now it's 3 instructions. Complete your user profile, adding in connections to other websites. Under options, set whether this is a single or a multi-author site, and links to your various sites will now appear on your site, allowing you to use IndieAuth and other services.
Yeah, I mean,
that's 3 steps.
And it's like once people get the tooling, it's like really, it's great. Like there's no problem.
Over the last 3 years, it's gotten a lot better because when it started, it was half the reason I built stuff was there wasn't anything that tied everything together.
So the main needs that you have, because like the plugins do, like that's what I was thinking when you asked that. It's like, what's missing? It's like the plugins. Well, you tapped into a lot.
Yeah, over time, what happened was there are these gaps, and each plugin has expanded a bit, trying to fill the gaps in between them. And so now the discussion is the semantic link backs merge into web mentions, which has been a controversial community issue where a lot of people want that to happen because people don't understand that web mention by itself is not a visually appealing experience. Because web mention is just the underlying plumbing. Semantic link backs is all the pretty stuff. The whole reason they are separate is that web mentions, just to try to interpret Matthias, because again, back to English as a second language, sometimes I think I know what he's trying to express, but he himself has said I don't necessarily know if I have the right words. Web mention is very clean code. It's evolved over years. It's been rewritten. I did a rewrite on it in 2016. He did a bunch of things. It's now running on the REST API in terms of running all of the endpoint communications instead of the original code, which had that all written. Well, somebody else maintains the REST API and actually cares about it. So it's a little better to base it on something that's going to continue to evolve elsewhere. But the code is clean enough that I think his opinion was if it stayed separate, then there's a chance that it might end up someday being massaged into core, whereas if it merges in with the much hackier semantic link backs, it's not going to. Now the counter argument is they're all separate files. That was one of the reasons I pushed him about a rewrite and took it on, was everything was all in one
giant file.
It is now that you could actually take the semantic link back files, include them, and the whole thing will work, and they all run independent pieces. So we could have it all in one plugin and just say the web mention receiver is this file, which it is. Now it's a separate file in there. The sender is in this file, which basically means we could take those 2 pieces and submit them separately. And that always ends up as a controversy. Same thing for micropub. Micropub is extremely simple. You see that if you watch Aaron writing one. It basically converts micropub submissions into WordPress posts. It tries to render them. However, if Postkinds is installed, it annoys the heck out of me because it tries to render it and Postkinds is also trying to render it. Right now, and I have to make some modifications based on the last thing I convinced except merge on, is it used to be that micropub would turn itself off if Postkinds was installed. And I asked him to change it so that Postkinds would turn off micropub, the rendering specifically, if it was installed, because I would rather make that decision on the Postkind side. Same thing with IndieAuth. The new version of the plugin actually is taking over IndieAuth from micropub. So if both are installed, the IndieAuth plugin will take care of the authentication, and micropub's fallback version of that code will be disabled. So we're trying to get them to work together. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago to talk about the rendering problem, which is who's handling microformats rendering? Is it the theme? which is capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Half the time, most of the themes don't. If it isn't the theme, is it Postkinds, which does microformats property rendering? It has to, the way that it's designed. Micropub, which accepts microformat properties from a micropub client and then tries to do something with them if you have nothing else installed.
Yeah.
So now you have two plugins and a theme that could all be trying to do the same thing.
I feel like in certain,
That's the biggest design
yeah,
problem.
I feel like in situations like this, I wish there were more plugins that kind of like extended the WordPress language. Like,
Well, there's no dependency management. If there was, then all the plugins would depend on a single microformats rendering thing that could be extended by any of them.
Right.
So we did come up. We haven't actually done a proof of concept, but we did have a long discussion and come up with a proposal on how we are going to key the system to work together. Hopefully that'll. So sometimes it's easier to not be in the same area with somebody else or with another plugin, just because you want everything to work together because you don't want to separately. So syndication links works very well with that because any plugin that does any form of syndication that wants to link in, there's a hook, there's a property, you just store your stuff. And I do a lot of integrations in there for plugins that people ask for. So somebody said, can you make it so that it can display if I post a Medium using the Medium plugin? Well, Medium plugin stores its stuff in a specific place. If that place exists, I show it. So there are at least 3 plugins that actually included their stuff that haven't been updated in a while. But the guy saw the plugin, liked it, and said, I'm going to put in the hook to. So that works well with everything as of now, assuming somebody writes the. And we'll see what's next. But I keep trying to figure out how do we fill in more of the gaps. Because there are, again, the theme versus plugin design problems of WordPress. Are a big problem because of the way that WordPress is designed. You want to put stuff on the screen, they think that everything is content. But what happens when you have basically reply to? So reply to is not part of the content. It is content, but it is not part of the content itself. It's outside the content. On most sites, what do people do? They merge it with the content, which means it's surrounded by the content block, which means parser thinks it's part of the content. So I came up with a solution that some people like and some people don't. I wrap basically the original content at through the filter at a very low priority. And so that everything else goes outside of it. So that means that the theme has to not put the content markup around it. It has to be done by filter. So, which means somebody could mess it up.
It's easy to mess it up.
But that's what I do on my themes. But not everybody does that.
Right.
I tried to talk the person who does independent publisher into doing that, and he said, well, that isn't a reliable way to do it. But there's no better way I can think of. Then blocks are coming. I'm scared of blocks.
Like a mess.
Well, how do you do all this stuff with blocks? And I don't want to know yet.
There's other people.
No, because worst case scenario, when Gutenberg comes, I can just force everybody to default to the old interface, which they said will still be available until I figure that out. Or until we all fight about it.
So you need people to come up with more IndieWeb stuff or IndieWeb stuff.
Well, it's more
plugins for WordPress.
It's ideas and it's contributions, and it's even, is there a plugin out there that would be willing to enhance itself? So it doesn't have to be a right from scratch thing. Is there a plugin where if you made modifications to that plugin that it would be more community friendly? And outreach is part of that, because I think some of the people who don't know about this sort of option will be interested. Last week there was a whole discussion where somebody was commenting, and I don't remember exactly how it played out, but it was somebody who was complaining about the ability to about basically comments and to tell people how you were linking to their site. Somebody replied to them on Twitter saying that WordPress already had that. It was called pingbacks. And then somebody chimed in and said, well, there's a new version, web mentions. And the people who were talking about this were all WordPress core committers. So several people hopped in and tried to take advantage of that to get them where, because there is an open ticket requesting that web mentions be added to core.
It's probably like 4 years old.
Not yet, I wrote it, so it's the day that the specification
Oh,
went out, I said it's a specification. Pingbacks never was.
Mhm.
The W3C really wasn't doing that sort of thing.
This is how you could fail.
You want the number? I probably could.
yeah.
I'll see if I can find
I think
it.
I already got it. Support web mentions.
Yeah, that's it.
That's you.
What was the date of?
2 years ago.
Okay, only 2 years. Okay.
That's pretty good for a WordPress.
Yeah, but no one is really. I'm the only one who's
You're
really.
the only one who's ever talked to it.
Feel free to put in a me too. So.
Yeah, sure.
And +1. Yeah.
But no, the thing is, it would be easy to bolt in. The design of web mentions the plugin, and I've discussed trying to move away from it. It was patterned after Pingback.
Mm.
Yeah.
It copies Pingback. I'm not talking about the specification. The way that it's designed. If you ping something on there, it adds to a.
Oh, we got 10 minutes. Sorry.
It adds to basically there's a database thing for to ping, and there's another one ping URLs. So web mention ends anything that it's sent a web mention to the ping URLs list in the post.
Mm.
It basically is a copy of the pingbacks code, updated, cleaned up, and so it's what pingbacks could be.
Yeah.
And what I tried to do, I actually wrote a new pingback handler for WordPress.
Mm.
You can actually replace the one that's built in.
Yeah, because it's
That-
pluggable, right?
Yeah, that actually, well, it's actually unpluggable.
Unpluggable.
It's not
Yeah.
a pluggable function. It's basically a hook
Oh, okay, yeah.
in the XML RPC server. So you can actually put in a completely new one.
Mhm.
And I went in and wrote one that actually used all of the web mention functions and basically just did everything that way.
Yeah.
I never released that.
Okay.
I thought about it, but what would I release it under? I don't care enough to.
Yeah.
I did it basically to say, okay, fine, we could just rip this code out of XML RPC,
Mhm.
have a common code base that does both, completely redesign the thing, and have two different plumbing methods that all link into the same system.
Mhm.
And I did proof of concept on it. Worked very well. Much better code. But then I went back as the pings and components maintainer, submitted a patch to clean up some of the more egregious things inside the existing pingback function. And was told that first it overscoped, so I underscoped it, and then nobody has looked at any of these things, and it goes to every version. Has any of the core committers looked at it? No. Pass. Punt. So it's been sitting there, and as the component maintainer, one of my listed jobs is to flag things for future releases.
Yeah.
So I flagged it 3 times. It got punted because nobody wanted to comment on it.
Yeah.
And I haven't tried to submit a patch in a while.
Yeah.
And I could because I have about 5 different proposals, including deprecating trackbacks. I actually tried to narrow the focus of my component maintaining team. Maybe I should sit down and write some patches. But I'd like to find more people, because the thing is, part of my problem is I push a lot on this stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe
It looks like
unsuccessfully.
it's just you.
Sometimes, yeah. No, it isn't. Chris is very active.
Yeah.
I know he's probably listening, considering he
Mhm.
was listening earlier. And there are other people who are active, but the thing is, I'm more visible sometimes because
Yeah.
I push a lot of these things because it's who is this guy? Where is he coming from? And why does he keep talking about pingbacks? But as I said, I'd like to try to build the WordPress side of things. We have the IndieWeb WordPress Outreach Club. How's that for a name?
Yeah.
IndieWeb WordPress outreach.
Yeah, it is basically the tagline under which community plugins go into the archive, and it's officially listed as a group of active IndieWebCamp participants who reach out to individuals running WordPress sites to add IndieWeb functionality to their existing sites.
Cool.
So at the moment, it consists of a group of people who are, if somebody has a WordPress site and wants to help IndieWebifying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where? So sorry. Where is the? What's the link for that?
IndieWeb.org/WordPress Outreach Club _ in between.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great.
The micro formats 2 plugin, which we keep talking about just dumping because it keeps messing up people's websites when it's designed to use at your own risk type thing. But
Yeah.
too many people use it at their own risk. Maybe I should change the tagline from enhances your WordPress theme.
May enhance your WordPress theme.
May break some themes. Right there at the top. Anyway.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know how to really get anything done on WordPress. I just kind of do my own thing with it.
I never know how to get anything done.
And don't even really like, I'm not involved in the community enough to like review traffic tickets. And
Well, we have Brandon Kraft, who works on the Jetpack team from what I gather.
oh yeah, I mean I know a lot of the core committers.
No, I'm saying
personally and stuff.
he's been interested enough to push a few things through. For example, Jetpack was messing up the web mention plugin. He actually,
So-
no, he pushed somebody to fix it. It wasn't his area.
Yeah.
So sometimes having somebody who knows how to navigate that, but it's not. I'm not. If I can't push the needle on the core team, I at least understand.
All volunteers.
Unless we change the name to Gutenberg mentions, it's not gonna really do anything.
You could be the first one to use blocks, and then everyone could.
Yeah, but no,
Got
I'm
it.
saying it's been made very clear that for at least the next year, that's all they're thinking about.
Got 5 minutes.
So, but if I could push more interest in other areas, I'd like to see people get involved in anything. And that's not just, again, developers, that's users.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I forgot to check. Did anybody say anything about this in chat? I should have looked. While we were talking.
I've been taking notes.
Yeah, you've been taking notes, but I'm wondering if there's anything in the chat from any of those people.
Let me see.
Oh, Phone Boy is back. Okay. Oh, nobody said anything about this particular. Sometimes they chime in. If you guys think of something you now know, if it's something, one of the plugins I'm involved with, you know where to.
Yeah.
You know where it's not, wasn't like it was hiding, but you now know how to connect directly to my brain.
I know the face behind the plugin.
But there's more coming. Let's see. Actually, I'm curious. What are the open issues on the actual IndieWeb plugin? I haven't looked in a while. Community plugin WordPress /IndieWeb. So it's IndieWeb/WordPress -IndieWeb on GitHub. So, developer instructions for HCard and RealMe inclusion into themes. Add black and white setting for RealMe icons. Optional email for RealMe. Link to IRC web Slack WordPress channel inside the plugin. Redo getting started with WordPress page into something more interactive, such as a wizard. Mark badge. More guided installation of sub plugins. Enhancements, local avatar. Avatar plugins, but none that link directly into it. The actual notation here is possibly include one in the installer part of it.
I feel like with the add a local avatar, so like there are other avatar plugins.
Yeah, but the actual issue is either build in or recommend a local avatar plugin. So it does not actually say add it to this plugin.
Right.
You can add it to the plugin installer. But if you look at a lot of the local avatar plugins, a lot of them aren't really maintained anymore.
Yeah.
One of the criteria that I sort of give is not necessarily that new features come in, but somebody's at least going in there and checking compatibility with new versions. If they seem to have just left it alone for 3 years and not checked it. Add a fragmentions plugin. Those are also mostly abandoned. Everybody got really excited about fragmentions for 5 minutes.
What are fragmentions? Oh, like
Not fragments, fragmentions.
yeah. What are fragmentions?
They're mentions of fragments.
Oh.
Basically, frag mentions would be if you wanted to not mention a URL, but you wanted to mention a specific port.
On the page.
Yeah, so the frag mention, unlike a fragment where it's basically to a specific anchor, frag mentions worked on the idea that the anchor would indicate, without you marking it up, where in the text you were doing. So basically, a hashtag after that would be a text.
So it'd be like example.com/, what's the identifier for a frag mention?
Basically, it would be an excerpt of the text. I can
Yeah,
show
but how
you.
you, but is it a
It's still
line sign?
It still is. If you actually look up the,
I think I've never seen this.
Yeah.
I've never seen this before.
So Kevin Marks came up with this.
Yeah.
So they find the first matching word or phrase in the document and focus on its closest surrounding element. The match is determined by the case-sensitive string following the hash. The closest surrounding element may be a span, paragraph, heading, button, input, or other. So basically,
The only way that works is if you are on client side, you're running JavaScript.
it works
for that.
for the display part of it. But for web mentions, I made the web mention plugin recognize fragments, which means it can do frag mentions. Except the semantic loopbacks plugin does not know how to parse it, which means it doesn't know how to display it. But it will store them for future use.
We have 10 minutes till the next session. Over here, Derek will be walking us through free websites. Yeah, CSS to make your stuff not look like garbage. And on the other side, on the other side, we'll be brainstorming activities to engage beginners.
Okay.
That'll be run by Jonathan.
Well, that dovetails very nicely with what we were talking about.
First IndieWebCamp session.
We brought more decongestants. Really wish you didn't have to actually go to a drugstore and show your first license and those things.
I've got a Zyrtec handy if you want one.
No, it never does anything for me. They're only a few. I need the restricted stuff.
Well, crazily enough, you have to show your ID to get Zyrtec too.
Yeah. I was thinking of Sudafedrin.
Yep.
I only have 3 more in the room. I should have brought them. Also, it wore off about 2 hours ago. I'm not walking 20 minutes to get one to vote.
How'd it go, David? No. Oh no. Oh wow. Well,
Neither of them committed.
the journey
Continues.
to writing
I'll get to it
plugins
eventually.
begins with
Yes, you told me you had a 20-year project.
No.